Hello everyone and welcome back to Mr Gray's Story Times. Remember, Key Stage 2, get yourself a blanket, snuggle up, get your teddy. Where's he? He's trying to run away from me. Don't remember Peter, my favourite teddy. He's come for another story. You're very lucky. What'd you say? You've hidden it again? Where have you hidden it, Peter? We're not playing these games anymore. Where is it? Get my teacher voice on now. The stare's not working. The teacher look's not working either. One of the characters is already reading it. Minnie is reading the story already, Peter. You are a naughty little rabbit. You sit yourself down there. Do you want a friend ready for the story? What about Mighty the Mouse? You look after Mighty the Mouse. Mighty's down there. I've got my blanket. And we're going to read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl, and the illustrator is Quentin Blake. I'm going to read you the first chapter tonight, and then tune in tomorrow for the second chapter. It's one of my personal favourites now. You're going to meet all of these characters a little bit later, but first we're going to start on chapter 1. Here comes Charlie. These two very old people are the father and mother of Mr. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine. And these very two old people are the father and mother of Mrs. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina. This is Mr. Bucket. This is Mrs. Bucket. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket have a small boy whose name is Charlie Bucket. This is Charlie. How do you do? And how do you do? And how do you do again? He's very pleased to meet you. The whole of this family, the 6 grown-ups, don't forget to count them, and the little Charlie Bucket lived together in a small wooden house on the edge of the great town. The house wasn't nearly large enough for so many people, and life was extremely uncomfortable for them all. There were only 2 rooms in the place altogether, and there was only 1 bed. There were only 2 rooms and 1 bed. My goodness me. The bed was given to the 4 old grandparents because they were so old and tired. Oh, sorry. I'm getting a bit old. See the beards, grey hair. They were so tired they never got out of it. Grandma Joe and Grandma Josephine on this side, and Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina on this side. Which side would you sleep on? Mr. and Mrs. Bucket and little Charlie Bucket slept in the other room upon a mattress on the floor. In the summertime this wasn't too bad, but in the winter freezing cold drafts blew across the floor all night long, and it was awful. There wasn't any question of them being able to buy a better house or even 1 more bed to sleep in. They were far too poor for that. Mr. Bucket was the only person in the family with a job. He worked in the toothpaste factory, where he sat down all day long at a bench and screwed little caps onto the tops of the tubes of the toothpaste after the tubes had been filled. But a toothpaste cap screwer, what a mouthful, is never paid very much money, and poor Mr. Bucket, however hard he worked and however fast he screwed on the caps, was never ever able to make enough money to buy half the things that so large a family needed. There wasn't even enough money to buy proper food for them all. The only meals they could afford were bread and margarine for breakfast, margarine's like butter, boiled potatoes and cabbages for tea, for lunch, and cabbage soup for supper. Maybe not every day, but Sundays were a bit better. They all looked forward on Sundays because then, although they had exactly the same, everyone was allowed a second helping. Spoiled or what, eh? The Buckets, of course, didn't starve, but every one of them, the 2 old grandfathers, the 2 old grandmothers, Charlie's father, Charlie's mother, and especially little Charlie himself, went about from morning till night with a horrible, empty feeling in their tummy. I don't get that, I've got a bit of a gut. Charlie felt it worst of all, and although his father and mother often went without their own share of lunch or supper, they could give it to him, it still wasn't nearly enough for a growing boy. He desperately wanted something more filling and satisfying than cabbage and cabbage soup. The one thing he longed for more than anything else was chocolate! Walking to school in the mornings, Charlie could see the great slabs of chocolate piled high in the shop windows, and he would stop and stare and press his nose against the glass, his mouth watering like mad. Many times a day he would see other children taking bars of creamy chocolate out of their pockets and munching on them greedily, and that of course was pure torture. Only once a year on his birthday did Charlie Bucket ever get to taste a bit of chocolate. The whole family saved up their money for that special occasion. And when the great day arrived, Charlie was always presented with one small bar of chocolate to eat all by himself. And each time he received it, on those marvellous birthday mornings, he would place it carefully in a small wooden box that he owned and treasure it in a bar of solid gold. And for the next few days, he would allow himself to only look at it, but never touch it. Then at last, he could stand it no longer. He would peel back a tiny bit of the paper, wrapping at one corner to expose a tiny bit of chocolate, and then he would take a nibble, just enough to allow the lovely sweet taste to spread all over his tongue. The next day he would take another tiny nibble, and so on and so on. And in this way Charlie would make his 6-penny bar of birthday chocolate last him for more than a month. But I haven't told you yet about the one awful thing that tortured little Charlie, the lover of chocolate more than anything else. Turn to Mum or Dad and ask, I wonder what that is. This thing for him was far worse. Far worse than seeing slabs of chocolate in the shop windows or watching other children munching creamy bars of chocolate right in front of him. It was the most terrible, torturing thing you could imagine. And it was this. In the town itself, you know where he lived, actually within sight of the house in which Charlie lived, there was an enormous chocolate factory. Just imagine that. Oh, my belly's grumbling already. Oh. And it simply wasn't an ordinary enormous chocolate factory either. It was the largest and most famous in the whole world. It was Wonka's factory, owned by a man called Mr. Willy Wonka, the greatest inventor and maker of chocolates there has ever been. And what a tremendous, marvellous place it was. It had huge iron gates leading into it, and a high wall surrounding it, and smoke belching from its chimneys, and strange whizzing sounds coming from the deep inside it. And outside the walls, for half a mile in every direction, the air was scented with a heavy, rich smell of melting chocolates. Oh. Twice a day on his way to school, little Charlie Bucket had to walk right past the gates of the factory, and every time he went by, he would begin to walk very, very slowly, and he would hold his nose high in the air and take deep, long sniffs of the gorgeous chocolatey smell all around him. Oh, how he loved that smell, and how he wished he could go inside the factory and see what it was like. Tune in tomorrow for Chapter 2. Sneaky little preview. Mr. Willy Wonka's factory. Will Charlie get to go in? Good night, everyone. Tuck up tight.